For anyone not aware of Image Comics' phenomenal Invincible series, it's best described as what would happen if you took a hero like Superboy or Spider-Man and let their fights have all the violence of a blood-soaked series like The Boys. It's intense, it's hilarious, and, most importantly, it's packed wall-to-wall with surprising plot twists, unusual events, and things that make you desperately buy the whole series at once, just so you don't have to wait to find out what happens next, as I once did a year ago. Covering the life of the superhero Mark Grayson, who takes on the title of Invincible, the series develops over time, from a fun and tongue-in-cheek superhero story to one of the most detailed and expansive comic universes in existence. While we often focus on the happenings at DC and Marvel, it's always worth letting something else have its moment in the limelight. As such, I'm Zoe from What Culture, and I'm taking a brief break from Batman to bring you the 10 Invincible moments that shocked the world. Number 10. Omni Man fights Invincible. Invincible, for all intents and purposes, pulls its punches for its first 10 issues, making it appear as though the comic is just another good, but ultimately run-of-the-mill superhero series. Then, in issue 11, Invincible's dad, Omni Man, or Nolan, depending on how close you are to him, starts murdering all of Earth's superheroes, having to be confronted by his son to end his murderous rampage. Nolan reveals that he's an alien sent from a species who want to take over and then destroy the Earth, which leads to an all-out fight between the two, which becomes Omni Man beating his poor unfortunate son into the dirt for 3 hours, before fleeing instead of landing the killing blow. It's a complete game changer, as while many heroes have villainous parents, they usually aren't raised watching said parent be a superhero, only to have them turn against them 18 years later. Number 9. Mark fights Alan. Perhaps one of the most surprising fights of the entire series is the first between Alan, a defender of the galaxy and an alien, and Invincible, who had only recently become a superhero at this point in time. However, Mark discovers that this new alien enemy isn't as he initially appears very quickly. Alan reveals that he's actually sent to planets in the Coalition every 3 years to check that their guardian hero is up to standard, which is why he's been sent to Earth, only he hasn't been. When Alan checks his rotor, he awkwardly discovers he's instead supposed to be at Urath, and has confused the two planets, much like a certain What Culture presenter pronouncing Darkseid wrong for roughly 7 months. After an awkward apology, Alan darts off to the planet he's actually supposed to be at, thanking Mark profusely for giving him a heads up. And so, hilariously, the two would begin a lifelong friendship that would never have happened if they tried to not murder each other. Number 8. Mark finds his brother. When Mark finally hunts down his father on a planet of blue alien bugs, the last thing anyone was expecting was for Nolan to show him a little purple child and casually explain that this was his half-brother, who his dad had made via some Star Trek-level space shenanigans with one of said insect people. It's completely surreal, as the minute the pair meet again you expect them to fight, because the last time they saw each other, Nolan was beating his poor confused son into the ground. Instead, the pair appear genuinely happy to see each other, although Mark is understandably more than a little confused about his new baby brother. And he only gets more confused, as Nolan explains that the toddler before him is actually only 3 weeks old, and that his alien heritage means that he ages at a rate far faster than what would be normal for a human. While this isn't a direct threat to new baby Oliver's life, as Nolan's species live for thousands of years, it does mean that things are more than a little weird, especially when Mark takes the baby to live with him and his mother. Number 7. The Vitrolmites swap sides. For the majority of the series, the Vitrolmite race serves as a looming threat slowly approaching Invincible, due to Mark's father also being one of the alien race, who did eventually reform. The rest of this group, however, we are repeatedly shown as violent, emotionless beings, who destroy worlds for their own game, and who have set their eyes squarely on Earth. However, with the plotline of Mark's father Nolan learning that he does genuinely care for his son and wife, it does begin to be suggested that these warmongers might not be as inherently evil as they're cracked up to be. Indeed, when they settle on Earth, we see that they appear to genuinely enjoy caring for the humans who come into their lives, aside from their leader, Frag, who continues to be the absolute worst. And so, when Thrag reveals that Nolan is a descendant of the beloved Vitrolmite leader Argol, his former teammates turn on him mid-fight, beating down on Thrag and electing Nolan as their new emperor. Few series have the main group of villains turn good 2/3 of the way through their comic, but Invincible does so absolutely perfectly. Number 6. Mark gives up a perfect life. After countless turmoil and the deaths of plenty of loved ones, Mark is transported back in time by an unnamed entity, who allows him to fix all the problems he had to face the first time around, only with powers and knowledge that allows him to fix pretty much everything. However, Mark isn't happy with this, as he's trapped years in the past, unsure if he'll ever get to see his wife and child again. With this in mind, Mark rejects the offer to let him stay in this timeline, as he wants to get back to his family and the people he cares about. The entity berates him for this, but the hero has a pretty good point, as if he'd stayed, he'd be more or less killing off everyone who existed in his timeline. Given you expect this storyline to continue to the end of the comic, it's pretty hugely surprising when instead, Mark tells the Force where it can stick its tendrils and returns to his own time. Number 5. Robot takes control of the planet. As a well-meaning superhero from pretty much the offset of the comic, Robot, also known as Rudy, or later Rex, seemed like he was set to be a completely lovable good guy for the comic's whole run. Then, after at least 100 issues, Robot goes fully off the deep end, having come back from an alien world where he was a dictator, which left him convinced that he would be able to do a better job with Earth than those currently in charge. As such, Robot murders a bunch of heroes he thinks might stand in his way, traps Invincible in an alternate dimension, and then kills Cecil, the former head of the Global Defense Agency, and takes his role. It's an absolutely brutal turn for the hero, as he suddenly becomes substantially more morally complex, as well as substantially less trustworthy. But then, he does end up being a brain in a jar at the end of the series, so maybe it all balances out. Number 4. Monster Girl's Secret Child. Although the majority of hype superhero action does center around our main character Mark, it is worth mentioning that all the side characters of the series have equally exciting arcs and reveals, regardless how big a feature they are in the comic itself. Case in point, Monster Girl, a superhero who is cursed to take the form of a huge ripped monster that she eventually gains control over. While trapped in an alien universe, Monster Girl decides to relax with a bit of good old-fashioned alien sex, which, unbeknownst to her, results in said alien getting pregnant. Issues later, when the heroes get in a fight with a green alien, a huge plot twist would reveal, as the alien looks Monster Girl straight in the eyes and calls her his father. Suddenly realizing she's been fighting her own child, Monster Girl freaks out, although later she would routinely visit her buff alien baby when he's placed in prison. Number 3. Oliver dies. For a long time, fans speculate that Oliver, Invincible's half-brother, would end up being the major villain of the series. Indeed, all signs did almost purposefully point to him turning rogue later in the series, as he repeatedly undervalued human life, and clearly thought little of destroying vast amounts of it in the name of a greater good. And while it's uncovered that Oliver has become a spy for the villain Frag, this doesn't mean he's gone AWOL from doing good. When Frag reveals that he's hunting down Invincible and his wife and child, Oliver abandons his loyalty to his species to rescue his brother and family. Despite the fact that Oliver knows that Frag is stronger than him, and that he could never win a fight against him, he bravely fights the former general in order to protect Mark's daughter. This results in Oliver being straight up eviscerated, and despite the fact we've seen many others come back from similar injuries, he dies from this in the most legitimately surprising death of the series. Number 2. Frag Loses. As the major villain of the entire series, it's not entirely surprising that Frag does in fact lose his final fight against Invincible. However, the entirety of the setup to the fight and the fight itself are the absolute definition of shocking. Frag uses an alien race to produce thousands of children with his superpowered genetic makeup, who age at an accelerated rate, meaning that he has an insanely strong alien army in the space of a couple of months. Then when the fight does actually kick off, he does the unthinkable, and punches a hole right beneath Omni Man's heart, using this to rip the unfortunate superhero in half. This isn't even the wildest part of the whole fight though, as the war between Thrag's children and our heroes is stopped by one of said kids, who realizes that the people she's fighting actually care about one another, unlike her dad. When the Murder Tots realize this, they stop fighting, leaving the rest of the battle to be fought solely between Invincible and Frag himself. Said fight ends with the pair punching each other senseless in the middle of the sun, while on fire, and screaming their moral oppositions at one another. You can't get more badass than that, really. Number 1. The end. With a series like Invincible, you don't really expect anything like a happy ending. An ending with happy moments, sure, but not an entirely happy one. Not after everything that had gone down in all the events prior. But against all logical possibility, the ending of the series manages to have Invincible and his family basically totally save most of the universe and have them work in harmony, while also discovering that Mark's wife Eve is reborn whenever she dies due to her superpowers. Essentially, it sets up for an ending where all our heroes and their families should have several thousand years of happiness in front of them, which was sure to come as a welcome relief for anyone who'd been waiting for the series to end, with just a little bit of fear in their heart. Maybe it sounds silly to praise a comic for having an extremely happy ending, but with the rest of the series having so many dark developments, and with edgy endings often being fairly popular, it's wonderful to see a comic go all out with a conclusion that makes you genuinely feel happy, too. And that's our list. What do you think about the comic? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to go to whatculture.com/comics to find us waxing lyrical about a bunch of other underrated gems. I've been Zoe from What Culture, and you can find me on Twitter at Zemaskel, if you want to, that is. Either way, thanks for listening, and have a great day.